We're going to talk about 8 writing strategies which are very common and yet set off major red flags for the reader. The ones that I see most often as an editor are number 5 and number 8, but I think we really need to talk about all 8 of these, so let's get started. Number 1, the backstory dump.
Backstory dump.
So I've got nothing against backstory, right? Some backstories are...
Only one Amir. Yo, how's it going, bro? Welcome, welcome. How are you? Welcome to the stream. Are you a writer? Are you a reader? Do you enjoy stories, good sir? Because that's what we love to do here. So, if you have anything that you would like me to read or share with the class, as it were, feel free to jump into the Discord and drop your stuff in public stories. Otherwise, hold on to your seat because we're about to go fucking crazy. I love what you're doing. Hell yeah, bro. Thanks so much.
They're absolutely fantastic and they're wonderful to read and they build the character and you love them. Like I always think of The Princess Bride, how in the book, not in the movie, in the book you actually find out all about like Inigo Montoya's training process for how he used to like grip rocks for hours.
A thesis is a college... Well, I know what a thesis is, Sean. I meant Tolkien's thesis of tedium, as you called it. What was the tedium over? The explaining of a backstory? Was that what it was in reference to? Cute Muffin! Yo, yo! How's it going, brother? Welcome, welcome. How are you, good sir? Did you stream today, Muffin? Thesis is a college paper usually about medicine, I think, and tedium refers to things being tedious. What Tolkien called the thesis of tedium is when an author takes an entire chapter to dump lore, rather than revealing it little by little as it becomes relevant. Yeah, Sean, that's the thing. It should be a slow over time kind of thing. It should never be, like you said, an entire chapter dedicated to the entire backstory of this one character. Have you read Diary of a Wimpy Kid? No, but, like, I know of it, Amir. And I was actually surprised that I'd never heard of it once I found out what it was. Muffin has. There you go. I think it was just, like I was one generation too far behind, right? I'm 33. So I think, I don't know when that stuff came out, but I think that was, like, past my generation. Yeah, because I don't remember any of this. Yeah, it was 2007. That's when it first came out. Damn, in history class we were talking about you? Damn, Muffin, that's a good one. I fucking love it. I'm fucking ancient, guys.
WTF you doin' watching this retard old ass bitch fuck streamer? Go watch someone with a young ass face like Asmon 247.
It came out when we were in grade high school-ish. Yeah, it came out in 2007. I was in grade 10 in 2007. That was like grade 10, grade 11. 2007. Jesus Christ. We're the same age? Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, at that point in time, I was like way too into anime to deal with anything else. Right? But it's good shit.
At the time to become a better sword fighter. I mean, I love that. I love that. I'm sad they left it out of the movie. But then there's the backstory. You're thinking like, wow, this just really slows the story down. It doesn't really...
Well, when I was your age, we didn't have AI to help us edit our writing. We just had a nun with a ruler. She smacked your wrist for every mistake you learned. True, Sean! Yo, bro, what is the best book you have read? That's a hard one, Amir, because, like, I'm an idea person. I'm not necessarily a, how do I say this? Like, I don't care how well written the book is, for instance, right? I care about what the idea is. So probably my favorite book is, probably actually Dragonlance, the Dragonlance series. And then second would be Sword of Truth. And then probably like his Dark Materials or It's a hard one. There's a lot of really good ones out there. How about The Protector of the Small Quartet, Tamora Pierce? Such a fun read with just enough dark to make it meaningful. No, Sean, sadly. But, you know, maybe one day. I mean, I had 8 years to do that, and I didn't fucking do it. So, you know, it is what it is. We're here now. We're doing it now, right? So maybe one day we will evolve the stream to a point of doing, like, a chapter of an actual book, and we'll do, like, comparisons between, you know, different things. Like, that's an idea I've had to, like, evolve the stream down the line. What games do you play? Usually I play Monster Hunter, Old School, RuneScape, Elden Ring. In this case, Expedition 33 is the new one to add to the list because it is the newest. Like, I haven't played Final Fantasy 16 on the PC yet, so I still have to do that. I'll probably do that if there's no other game after Expedition 33 when I'm completely done with it. But yeah, we gotta go back to the Final Fantasy. I just wish Final Fantasy was turn-based, like Expedition 33 is. I think that's like the Expedition 33 combat is like the future of turn-based games. It's so interactive, it's so much fun, and it's such a high pace for a and you could even add, like, because the one thing it doesn't have is it doesn't have like ready timers, right? So it's like you could even go to the point of having like your ready timer mode and your turn mode, right? So like the faster you play, the more rewarded you are, because if you wait for all the bars to fill up, you're basically wasting turns, right? So I like having the option of that somewhere in there, which would be really cool. But who knows? Well, who knows if we'll see an expansion or an entirely different game out of that studio? I'm super excited for it though. Expedition 33 is a fucking masterpiece.
Really add to the storyline I really care about, and I'm kind of bored. So I would say that when you're writing a significant chunk of backstory, that you want to watch out for two mistakes. One, ask yourself whether the most exciting parts of your story are in your backstory. If so, maybe it's
most exciting parts of story in backstory. Very true. So if we're looking at, like, for instance, thinking either like the Warriors of Light, who's Hildebrandt Walker and Yap, or like Gluttony and Varius. It's like their backstories kind of like all meld and work together. So it's like each character can spill a little bit more of the story, if that makes sense. So it's like the more characters that are involved in the actual backstory, I think also makes that backstory like more important, right? Like the reason why these three adventurers always travel together and they're like brother and sisters, and they're like fucking family, they're so close together, like some sort of life or death situation. And that's like each character will have some sort of life or death situation because these are the top adventurers in the entire world, right? And the top adventurers in the entire world are usually... There's like 3 reasons why they're so much, like... so much stronger, essentially, than other adventurers is... Either they have some sort of monarch or viceroy blood that they don't know about, that's been leaked out. They have an exceptionally high, like, learning curve and ability to, like, basically, like imagination. So it's like they're really good at magic and they're really, like, visual, like, learners kind of thing. Yo, bro, I know you will get to top and be the best streamer. Just dedication and upload a lot. You will be up there soon. Just believe in yourself, and I wish you the best luck. Hell yeah, Amir. Thanks, good sir. That's what people say, you know? I mean, it is what it is. Whatever happens, happens. I'm here for the ride. I'm just having fun, right? We're just killing time, having fun, and holding ourselves accountable to actually learning to be a better writer, right? And then the third thing that makes them, like, such an exceptional adventurer is the main one is a life or death experience that basically evokes a tidal awakening inside of them. And what that does is it basically upgrades their consciousness, because they were at, like, such a pivotal point of life and death that it upgrades their consciousness to a level that Gaia can interact with it more directly. So basically the idea behind Husai is that he was born already titled, and that's why Gaia has influence on him. And that's why this is like something I've been considering, is why he has multiple titles. And he's the only one who has multiple titles. And titles are kind of just like how they work is just an innate knowledge that's bestowed upon you by Gaia that you just know. It's like instinctual knowledge pressed upon your consciousness and, like, literally, like, downloaded into your brain. That's kind of like the idea. And then that causes a little bit more of Gaia's power to be able to flow through you. So that's just like all of these scaling factors lead up to being, like, the best of the best adventurers, right? Like, Husai is genetically engineered. The Warriors of Light are genetically engineered. Half of the Guardians of the Warriors of Light are engineered. Hildebrandt, Walker, and Yap aren't engineered, but they titled at a very, very young age. So they've, like, escalated and scaled out their power from being such a young age when they gained their title. It is basically like uncapping your skills. Like, everyone else gains 3 skill points when they level up. These characters gain 6. It's like, that's an insane advantage that you have, right?
It's a clue that either you need to make your current story more exciting, or your real novel happens in the backstory and you should actually tell the novel there. And 2, you want to watch out for the ratio of backstory to current.
To watch out for the ratio of backstory to current moment story.
Now, if you're alternating and it's half and half, that's completely fine. But if, like, 80% of your book is current story and then 20% of your book is backstory, that could really slow the pace down. In a situation like that, you want to consider whether maybe summary would be better rather than doing it as scene. In other words, take a paragraph rather than taking an entire chapter. The second red flag is the research showcase. This is when you stop the story basically to demonstrate, like, I did a lot of like that. You want to consider whether maybe summary would be better rather than doing it as
hate how it goes by so fast I can never catch
rather
it.
than taking an entire chapter. The second red flag is the research
showcase.
showcase. This is when you stop the story basically to demonstrate, like, I did a lot of work on writing this novel and you're gonna know it. For example, when someone's trying to buy a sword, the author stops and takes 3 pages to talk about the history of sword making. Some of the time that's absolutely great and the reader wants it. And then
yeah, that's kind of like, so how do we put this? So dancing and like movement and flow and structure is very important to the potency of control with magic. So the way that I would do this is because like I want to study like a bunch of stuff on like, you know, like tap dancing, like a ballerina, ice skating, like pop dance, you know, like different types, like break dancing and stuff like that, right? And get the actual like vocabulary of that topic and incorporate that into the book so that people who are of that category can say, oh, I completely understand what you're saying. And then you just do that with every single topic. So anyone who's like an expert in a topic sees something in the book and they go, oh, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. He's incorporated these things. But it's not like a lore dump of like, you know, the other than like a summary of something like, oh, folding a sword 7 times or 77 times or 177 times or 1,077 times. It's like the more times you fold steel, the stronger the blade, right? It's like you can show it in small, tiny pieces as opposed to like a documentary of how sword making is made. Like, for instance, like I'm not gonna have a documentary of how the crystal material in the tree is made. Like, it's a material that comes from the tree. It may be a crystal, but it's still like the essence of a living tree. So it's like, what are all the things that we do with wood, right? Now expand that to being like, now imagine if wood was like plastic. Now imagine working with a product that's like wood and plastic. It's like, you can grind it up to make pulp, to make paper. You can use it for like sturdy things like desks and chairs and, you know, stuff like that, like actual building materials. You could use it for something like saran wrap to wrap around things, right? Or like cloth, like fabrics and stuff like that, right? Like you can make basically an infinite amount of things out of it. Think of like everything that you could do with hemp, you would be able to do with this. So it's like every aspect of how you could fracture a material in real life, like, you know, cutting wood or like fraying strains of like hemp. It's like depending upon how you break the crystal and how you mold the crystal, you can basically force it to do anything. So it's just through the manufacturer process, and there'll be like a, you know, a sentence here or a sentence there about, you know, the basis of it and how they compare it to what people do on the outside, and looking at like outside parchment made by like, let's say, the Adventurers Guild in the main cities who don't have, that are outside of Ifrit, that don't have access to the like a good supply of trees or like pieces of crystal from the tree. So they use actual trees using the same type of methodology. So then you have like, you know, wooden buildings made out of trees with like paper and stuff, and you can contrast that and compare that to the plastic that's used inside of the tree and how that's manufactured. So it's like you don't need to go in depth with it, you just need to give a couple of sentences that give an emphasis on either a comparison, a contrast, or an idea behind something, or a basis, a foundation for it.
Other times the reader's completely bored by it, so you have to discern which is which. I would always ask yourself, like, could this section be shorter? Does it need to be 10 pages, or could it be a paragraph? So for an example, we're gonna look at James Michener's Hawaii. Now, okay, let me say, I actually like James Michener quite a lot, right? I am not like a Michener hater in any way. And I actually think Hawaii is a fantastic book. But if you came to me and said, I wanna start my novel with a 34-page geological history of an island, I'd be like, you crazy.
Yeah.
It's very ambitious, and it's also very dangerous, right? Did James Michener pull it off? Well, yeah, he did. Can you pull it off? I mean, less likely.
Yeah,
not impossible.
maybe not.
It's just difficult. So don't keep your research in. If you really are trying to make your research not go to waste, That's not a good reason. Or because your ego wants to keep it in, like you want to show off how smart you are and how much work you did. Do keep research in if you honestly believe that readers are going to be fascinated by this information.
It's more of like, I just need a basis to go off of for movement so that I can build a system with specific names based off of the description of certain moves. So when I describe a move, somebody who's, let's say, a dance expert would say, oh, I can put the name to what that move is. What are we talking about right now? Beezus, we were talking about things that you shouldn't necessarily go lean too hard into in your book. And the current one is the research showcase. And it's talking about things that you do research for and then trying to show in the book, oh, I did research on this by trying to show that you know a lot of information about this topic. And for instance, one thing for me that I want to research is dance. And like the different categories of dance and how each move is basically specified and like described. So I can describe it in the textbook way so that when I can name it, because I basically want to have like it'll be like a sentence into a paragraph by the end of the book. It'll be like, they perform X, Z, A, B, C, D, E, Y, F, G. And it's like, since you know the name of the moves have been built up over time, it's like now you just have the innate imagery of how it's done. So instead of describing it, because what I want to do is, let's say it starts with 5 sentences. The first time it's 5 sentences. The second time you remove the middle sentence, it's 4. Then the next time it's 2. Then the next time you only use the name. Then you use the name 3 times. Then the next time you use the name, you add 1. And then the next time you use the name, you add 3. And the next time you use the name, you add 5. And then you do 3, 2, 1, back to the name. And then you add a new one. And by that point, it should be ingrained in the reader's mind, this word enacts this action by character. Right? So if I say, the character performs a flugel flow, skoogle max, moogle dola, you know that they basically did like a triple backflip, quadruple spin around underneath their legs, handstand, but it's like, I've taken something that would normally take a page to describe and turned it into a sentence over the progress of the entire book, right? I spent like a full day looking up how to hog-tie a person so I could write 1 paragraph of my story. See, Beezus, that's good. See, showing the research in the actions that are taking place, like for instance, a great example of this is the actor who played Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones. For the one scene where he's skinning some sort of animal, like a deer, he wanted to learn how to skin so that during that scene it would look absolutely authentic. So he learned how to skin just for that one scene. But it's like, that's how you add a repertoire of different like skills and stuff, right? Is you say, oh, this skill would be good for this moment. Learn that skill, keep that skill. You're always going to have the skill, and if it ever comes up again, you can use it. And you just keep building up and banking these skills.
Or if it builds the plot or character. And by the way, comment below if you've ever read a book with too much research in it. And yeah, go ahead, name and shame. I don't care, name drop. The third red flag for readers is emotional telegraphing. This is when the author is
emotional telegraphing. Yeah, usually you don't want characters to be like, I'm angry! You want a character to be like, shouts, why did you do that, slams fist on table. Or, character smacks themselves in the head and goes, why the hell did I do that? She says angrily. This is my worst quality. Alright, she says angrily too much. I'd throw in, like, body language. Like, looking back on Expedition 33, and those scenes with just facial expressions and no dialogue say so much about the characters. It's like half of it just isn't dialogue. It's like one thing that you learn early when you're learning music is breaks. Breaks in the music is like, breaks are almost more important than the notes themselves. The spacing between the notes, right? Because that dictates the actual flow of the song, or whatever it is.
The reader what to feel about everything. This is what you're supposed to feel. Don't miss it. In other words, is not trusting the reader that they are going to have the right emotions created by the story you told. So I'm going to do something very heretical right now. I am going to rewrite a passage from Cormac McCarthy. I'm sorry in advance. And also, this contains spoilers for the road, so be warned. So here's a Cormac passage if you decided to telegraph emotions. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to read it, but I would just like to point out that there are 7 leading emotional words in this very short paragraph. Unbearably, anguish, devastated, grief-racked, sorrow, mourned, and tragedy. It's like the author wants to wave a giant flag that says, hey, this is what you're supposed to feel. Now, here's the actual passage before I absolutely butchered it. He slept close to his father that night and held him, but when he woke in the morning, his father was cold and stiff. He sat there a long time weeping, and then he got up and walked out through the woods to the road. When he came back, he knelt beside his father and held his cold hand and said his name over and over again. So the previous one, what it focused on was emotions, right? It told you the exact emotions that you're supposed to feel. What the real one does is that it focuses on actions and it focuses on details. And guess what? The reader's gonna feel the sorrow. When you want readers to feel an emotion, do not name that emotion. All you should do is present the drama that elicits that emotion. And by the way, I'm very passionate about this, if you can't tell, because I actually wrote an entire chapter about this in my book, The Linchpin Writer. And it talks about how not to evoke emotions in the reader and how to evoke emotions in the reader, because honestly, if you think about it, evoking emotions is probably the most important task that we have as authors. Anyway, get a copy of the book if you haven't read it all.
And that's one of the things that, like, I guess what makes me, or people say, and what I think makes me, like, specifically good is I'm a extremely emotional person. So it's like I can easily jump into a situation and be like, all right, what is the heartfelt here, and how can you, like, fuck with that, right? How do you make people go right? Or the, like, shit. It's like, I love those moments. Like, one of my favorite moments from that is Sword of Truth. Now, it's been built up for, like, the last, like, entirety of the book, because one of the characters is possessed by a certain magic that is invoking, like, some sort of rite. So it's like this random woman and this random dude come in between the two characters who are in love. And the third character, who's, like, controlling the magic, says to the female character, the main character, Kaylin, says, when the time comes, trust me. And there's a prophecy that says the woman in white will betray him in her blood. And it's basically saying that she'll cheat on him. And everyone's like, this is a sword of truth. And basically it's like, okay, so there's the character Nadine and the character Drafen. They're the side characters. So Drafen is supposed to marry Kaylin, and Richard, the main character, is supposed to marry Nadine. Now, they're all blindfolded, and Kara, the character who is controlling the magic, who told Kaylin, when the time comes, trust me, leads Nadine to one hut, leads Drafen to one hut, leads Richard to one hut, and leads Kaylin to one hut. And then it's like this entire long scene about Richard's, or, well, that's kind of a spoiler, about, like, how, like, the touch that Kaylin is feeling, like how warm it is, how compassionate and soft, and in her head she's thinking, oh, this is Dreffin, you know, trying to be like, I know this is really unfortunate, but hey, we still have to do this. And then, you know, they fuck, but it's like she's not into it, so nothing happens. And then she realizes that she actually has to do this, so, you know, she gets herself wet and she rides his dick until she comes. And then thunder roars and everything happens, and then Kaylin basically looks up and says, don't tell Richard. And then lightning flashes, and it describes Richard's gray eyes. Pillars of Creation is a part of this series. Yes, Pillars of Creation is an entire book dedicated to backstory and lore. I could go on forever that the Pillars of Creation doesn't need to be as extensive as it is, and Jensen doesn't really need to be an actual character. But, you know, it is what it is. That's what happens when you have a 13-book series, right? Some of them just kind of get out of hand. It's like in a Leviathan Wakes, the 4th book. The entire book is spent on a planet, but the entire series is about planetary travel, so it's like, it's kind of weird. I was forced to read that book in high school by my AP English teacher, and literary just learned this was book 7 in a series. Yeah, if you've... Oh, and it's the worst book in the series because it's all exposition. It's all leading up to the reason why the Rawls made the pact in the first place. Woollywood. Welcome. I hated it so much. It was such a bad book. It was such a bad book. It was just the only way I powered through it was knowing that there is one scene in the book that is my favorite scene. But anyways, I'm gonna finish what I'm saying. So like it flashes, right? And it describes Richard's gray eyes, and you know Richard's the only one who has gray eyes. And you're sitting there like, it was Richard the whole time! It was Richard the whole time, and she just betrayed him! Oh my god! Oh my god! And just that feeling evoked in you, because you know that, like, you're thinking as the reader, like, this whole time, like, no, this is so horrible, they only got to fuck in the spirit world, because if they ever have a kid, it's gonna be a male confessor, and it's gonna bring back the old days and the fucking dark days of the confessors. So they only get to fuck in the spirit world. So it's like, fuck, they don't even get to fuck now. And it's like the one time they get to fuck, it's all fucked up. It's like, I love that shit, just toying with the characters. But yeah, Woollywood. This one is definitely my favorite. 100%. Throw that up in there, right? But anyways, yeah. And then there's my favorite scene, actually, it's funny, because my favorite scene from the entire series, Beezus, is in Pillars of Creation. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Because Jensen can't see magic, right? They've set up the plan to make Zed and Addie look like Kaylin and Richard, and run around the main palace, and basically, like, chase people all over the place and scatter their army. And then there's one scene where they conjure an army that's made out of magic. And so Jensen's standing there. She can't see magic. So the gates open, the army rushes forwards, and she's standing there like, what the fuck is going on? Because it's one army fighting nothing. Because they're fighting magical army. Right? The start of the series was so graphic, I honestly didn't believe I got the right book for my high school assignment. Yeah, the book is kind of fucked. Like, at the very beginning with, fuck, what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Well, the whole series, like, if you look at, like, Richard during the times when he's with Denna, before he turns the sword white, and the way that he turns the sword white, like, that's another thing that's so fucking beautiful about it, is the only way, so, like, this is one thing that I've never seen ever done with anything else. This is normally how it goes. You need to sacrifice something that you love. That's boring. You know how you make that interesting? You fucking turn that around. You say, you need to fall in love with something that you need to sacrifice. So knowing that this is something that you need to sacrifice, you have to somehow fall in love with it. So Richard's thing is he's captured by Denna, and he's made to basically be a dog at Darkenral's feet. And Denna and the Mord Sith are basically dominatrixes with like this little like rod device thing called an aegil. That basically if you run it along your skin it causes blisters and burns. If you tap it, it can break bones. If you put it inside of the ear, it's the most excruciating pain you'll ever have. And like while Richard is getting tortured, then you learn about the Mord Sith that every Mord Sith and the aegil that they carry was the aegil that was used to submit them. So while they're holding that aegil, they're feeling the same pain that they're inflicting on the other person. And then Richard never hates Denna. He sympathizes with Denna because of her situation, right? And Denna winds up falling in love with Richard, and one night she says, show me what it's like without the pain, and she puts down her aegil. So Richard, ever being the man and gentleman that he is, stabs her through the heart with the sword of truth and turns it white. Because without the aegil, she doesn't have control of his magic anymore. It's just such a fucking brutally amazing scene because you know Denna's not necessarily evil. It's just the way that the world is turned them into this person. And it's so sad and dark, and the way that you fall in love with the Mord Sith later on, it's just like, oh, it's such good writing. Like, that's what I strive to try to mimic, is that those provoking emotional feelings, right? That's why it's attributing my social and political views into the book in the way that the tree is structured in a utopia is and like how I think the main utopia would fall, which is through stagnation and the lack of drive to press the civilization to the next stage, essentially.
Already. Number 4, the abusive cliffhanger. In the late 1800s, Thomas Hardy...
Okay, I'm probably extremely guilty of this.
wrote a serialized book called A Pair of Blue Eyes. And he ended one chapter with a man hanging off of a cliff. It was a literal cliffhanger. Was it the inspiration for the term cliffhanger? Maybe, maybe not. The historical record's mixed on this, but it was one of the first examples of a chapter ending with someone hanging off of a cliff. But this section's called the abusive cliffhanger because, you know, this is a technique which has been abused by a lot of authors. Instead of closing the loop and make you feel satisfied with the ending of the story, they open up this giant cliffhanger and sort of force you to buy the next book. This gets people angry.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, is my ending is up to the imagination of the reader. Because it's supposed to be the eternal battle between Gaia and Anima. And the only thing that Anima can do is hold, or the only thing that Gaia can do is hold Anima at bay. So you could just imagine this endless struggle of all of this consciousness coming together to stop a being from devouring all of existence. And that leaves you with this feeling, or at least it leaves me with this feeling, that that could be out there. That somewhere in our universe, Anima and Gaia are having their eternal conflict. So it's like destruction of the world and all of the characters die, but it's like consciousness is so powerful you live beyond your physical form as consciousness, right? And that's what's kind of been building up to the entire book. So it's like, it does leave you on a cliffhanger, but there isn't anything more. And the cliffhanger that the first book leaves you on is like insane, but it needs to happen because that's where everything comes together, right? It's the Order 66 moment.
Really angry. But what we should do is divide between abusive cliffhangers and good cliffhangers. So an abusive cliffhanger is when you don't solve the central problems that the readers have been looking forward to finding out the solution to for the entire book. Come on, man, you're just doing the readers dirty. A good cliffhanger is where you...
See, that's the thing, is you do solve everything, but the end of the first book introduces an entirely new concept. Because no one had thought at this point in time that there was such a thing as anima. Or there was such a thing as Gaia. Gaia and anima are not defined by the first book. They're defined at the beginning of the second book. So, unlocking... Oh, there's these grand celestial beings that live inside of planets, and this one has grown to the point of devouring existence... is merely peeked at the end of the book when you find out how strong the monarch actually is. And you're like, there's no way anyone can actually be that strong. Husai's not even that strong. And the fact that the Viceroy switches sides and kind of has his monologue about it, you're like, wait, what the fuck? And then Fafnir comes in, Fafnir dies, and then you're running to the fucking... And it's like the reveal of the Warriors of Light. So it's like all the things that have been accumulating during the book end, basically, but then an entirely new thing opens up, like all the subtle things that have been pushed throughout the book. You're like, oh my god, we just unlocked a whole new door. That I think that's like the difference between like I guess an abusive cliffhanger and a good cliffhanger. Like the bad cliffhanger would be like them confronting the monarch, the Viceroy turning, and it ending with him snapping his son's neck. And you're like, wait, what? Huh? What the fuck? Wait, what? There's nothing left. Like, that's a fucking dick move. You've destroyed a character, you've destroyed another character, and you've completely fucked everything, and the one thing that you had on your side, you no longer have on your side. Okay, with the Viceroy, we will be able to beat the Monarch. Oh shit, we don't have the Viceroy. In fact, now it's a 2v12 instead of like a 13v1. Fuck. But that actually has to go through, and then the monologue, and then everything happens. The characters get fucked. Reveal of the Warriors of Light and how powerful they actually are because they outdo Husai. It's like, this is normal adventurers, this is Husai, this is the Warriors of Light. And this is the Warriors of Light now revealed in their full, literal, fucking, space mech, fucking Warhammer 40k style fucking armor. Like, the mix of technology and magic, essentially.
You resolve all the major problems you've been talking about for the entire book, but then you open up a new problem and present some sort of new twist that the reader wants to see. Okay, now I want to see how that's going to be resolved.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you have 4 major plot lines in your book and you resolve 3 of them and resolve the last one sort of partially, but then indicate there's some other twist or something else that brings tension, the reader's gonna feel satisfied because they got the answers to most of the stuff you've been talking about for the whole book, but they still want to find out the last question. That's a good cliffhanger, people, so, don't abuse your reader. The 5th red flag is the single trait syndrome. So
Single trait syndrome.
beginning that this is one that I see really often as an editor, and it's true. The single trait syndrome is when characters are defined by one major trait and the author sort of sloppily says it in every scene just to remind you, like, oh hey.
Oh yeah, Husai's super logical. Oh yeah, he's thinking about this mathematically. He's always using a formula. Or Arius. He's always extravagant. He's always out there. He's always poetic. He's always, I guess you could say, jiving his body. He's a big jiver. It's like octopi naturally kind of jive, because they don't have bones, right? So they're always kind of like their legs are always kind of like squiggly and swaying, so their heads are always kind of swiveling and stuff like that. But it's like Varius just does this out of his own nature. He's always got like a beat in his head. Oh, and another thought I had that I was going to say is Varius and Gluttony facilitating the idea of having battle music. And having like the idea of having the reader think and like imagine battle music while the battles are happening, because the characters are literally playing instruments and singing and dancing while during combat, right? Because it's like that's how their magic as a support works, right? So just having that kind of, because I always wanted to incorporate like all of the, you know, video game aspects, but do it in a way that feels real, like spell catalysts for spells, the way that like MP or mana works, cooldown on your abilities, battle music, or like just background music in general for different areas, for different feels, for different characters and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely feel that.
This is who this person is, don't forget. Say, for example, a character's like red hair is mentioned every single time they appear in a scene. Or say there's a character who like always mentions CrossFit in every single scene. And what happens is that these traits end up being caricatures rather than like actual personality traits of someone who appears to be a real human being. And a great term that you should absolutely know is Flanderization. If it
Okay.
appears to be a real human being. And a great term that you should absolutely know is
Flanderization. Flanders. I haven't heard that one in a long time. Instantly. I wonder if I can find the clip. My mind instantly goes to this.
The Widowmaker. Oh, that one's for the ladies. Spinebuster, boring. Woo, Colostomizer. Don't hurt me. Here's my wallet.
Hi, diddly ho, shucks in boots.
Flanders? That suit's a little revealing, isn't it?
Well, it allows for maximum mobility. Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all.
Quit it! Must wash eyes! Uh-oh. Okay, don't panic. Remember what the instructor said.
If you ever get into trouble, all you need to do is...
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Stupid sexy Flanders! Ow, my leg! This is the worst pain ever! Go! Go! Ah! 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 Ah!
Oh, good times.
Flanderization. If any of you are big Simpsons fans, this term comes from Ned Flanders, who at the beginning of the series was like a fairly complex, fully rounded, religious man. He made mistakes, but he also like grew and developed as a character. But as you watch over the seasons, there's a Flanderization where all of these complex traits are sort of reduced to this one thing. Basically, he's a hyper-religious guy. So just watch out for that oversimplification of character in your own books. Also, if you want to get better at characterization, I'd recommend taking my course, The Triangle Method of Character Creation. Check out that one in Book Fox Academy. Red flag number 6 is the trauma-defined character.
Trauma-defined character. Uh-oh. The trauma-defined character in the book by miles is probably one of the Warriors of Light. He's so fucked up that he can't, like, talk. Like, he uses, like, puppets and stuff, and he like, doesn't show himself. He'll like always hide away. You can pretty much guarantee that if you see the character, it's actually a clone copy of the character. It's not the actual character themselves. Like, they'll be hiding away somewhere else, like literally like dig a hole in the ground for themselves and like bury themselves alive. Like, fucked up shit. Just to not like be a part of anything. And you know, when they actually show up or when they actually talk, it's like happens once in the entire book, and that's at the end of the book when that character comes to, because that character is the character that they've basically, as the Warriors of Light, they've basically been like, if this character pops off, that's our signal to basically go all out. If he's going all out, we go all out. And that kind of happens at the end of the book. And that reveals like how powerful they are and stuff like that. It's just like mind-blowing, right? It's like, because the Monarch just like meteor kills Fafnir, and the Warriors of Light like hold the Monarch off enough for everyone to kind of get away in time, or something like that, right? But that character is like, you know, he'd been through some shit. He almost died like 20 times. He'd been through some, you know, he's lost all his friends like 12 times. He lost his family. He's had shit happen to him. He's scarred as fuck. That's why, like, one of the main reasons he doesn't want to show his main body is that, like, he got really, really fucked up. I don't know if it'll be like, from like, I want to either do like, he got stabbed by a Tonberry and he took everyone's grudge, or he took like 10,000 needles from like a cactuar, and you know, he's literally like just literally completely fucked. His like body is completely scarred all over.
Obviously, it is a great idea to have your main character have trauma in their backstory, right? I mean, trauma forms us in a lot of different ways, so it makes sense. However, it's a huge red flag if that trauma attempts to explain all of their actions in the present or becomes the totality of their character. Trauma really can't explain everything that a character does or everything that they are. So I had a hard time coming up with examples for this one because most of the bad examples I've read are kind of in unpublished novels, right? So instead, I'm gonna give you a good example. A good example would be Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. Now, this is a woman who's experienced physical, sexual, emotional, financial abuse. Like, there is no shortage of trauma in this woman's past. But while that provides motivation for her, I don't feel like that defines her in totality. She is a hacker. She is super smart. She's like this weird goth geek. Trauma is part of her character, but by no means is it the whole thing. So use her as an example of how to avoid a trauma-defined character. 7, the consequence-free
drama.
drama. This is when something happens in a story, some big event, and then somehow in the next chapter, like, it's completely forgotten about. One that I see really frequently is characters getting injured either psychologically, right, like death of the father, or actually injured, like a big cut on their arm or something, and then the entire next chapter doesn't say anything about it. Like, it's just dropped as if it never happened. I think writers do this because, man, it's difficult to write a novel. You're juggling like 9 different things in your brain as you're writing every single chapter. 9, more like 100 different things. And so you forget about the cut to the arm or the death of the father. What's good though is that I actually think this is a pretty easy revision. Just make sure when you have a really big event happen to make sure you go to the next, say, 3 chapters, look for places where, oh, they checked their arm and their arm's healing, or oh, like the love interest ends up wrapping the arm for them. Little details like that make the reader feel like you haven't completely dropped the ball and that you're continuing the plot. And if a father died, then you need to have them think periodically for the entire rest of the book about a memory of something their father did with them or something their father once said to them. Just remind the reader of that father relationship and the reader will remember, oh yeah, the father died. Yeah, that's right. And they won't feel like you have completely forgotten like a crucial element of the story. The 8th and final red flag is the gimmicky surprise. So what is the difference between a gimmick and a genuine surprise? That's actually a good question, and I want to like talk about those differences. Gimmicks tend to be surface level tricks that don't really serve the storyline. They're used primarily for shock value. You often enjoy a gimmick during the reading process.
Like, for instance, a gimmick would be killing Zayd. So it was a gimmick. We were like, yeah, we're just gonna kill this character. And then it evolved into the point of, no, this character's death is the most pivotal point in the book. It reveals, like, how it's the downfall of the main character. It's the reveal for who the main bad guy is. It's a character that's been built up over the entire book that you've learned about vicariously through the contrast of the Viceroy and his acts, and the way that Husai has dealt with his guilt of not bringing Zaid, is always talking about Zaid and comparing him to the Viceroy and saying, man, if Zaid was here, he'd love this about the Viceroy. And since the Viceroy is already doing this, the things that I didn't want Zaid for are already happening. So you're definitely feeling like, okay, by the time they go back to the tree, Zaid's going to be a party member. And then he just fucking dies. He doesn't even die on screen. The only time you get to see him die is during the play. That's over-exaggerated, over-hyperbolic, over fucking everything with his dying monologue that he never said. But it just makes for good... Well, the whole point of it is to immortalize Zaid forever. And basically raise him as, like, the main adventurer who could be, you know, the savior of the adventurers inside of the tree.
But then when you look back after you read the book, you're like, that was a kind of cheap trick to use. And another thing is, gimmicks don't usually allow you to read the book a second time. You know, it's like, you know the surprise, so there's no sense in the story.
That's the other thing, is we want there to be like a new game plus where you can go back and read the story again, and you'll get an entirely different perspective because of the amount of information that you have now. And then you'll pick out all the Easter eggs that maybe the first time you went through you didn't quite fully understand. Now you're like, oh, this was all foreshadowing! Oh my god. Right? That's the hope, right? That's the hope versus the reality.
So a classic example of a gimmick was, it was all a dream into the storyline. This usually...
Gimmick in Expedition 33. It was all a painting. Yeah, I hate those.
Just makes the reader feel like, oh, yeah, you got...
There is the concept of it was all a dream, but that's like the idea that your physical reality that you're experiencing now is like a waking dream state, right? So it's like when you die and your consciousness leaves your body, you go back to like your main self, and then you decide what you want to do with your existence, right? Do you want to do another physical layer, or do you want to move on to the next non-physical layer of whatever conscious reality there is outside of a physical dimension, essentially? And that's what I explore in my book with consciousness, and how Gaia is like the source that you return to, and all things from universal slowly break themselves down, and that source returns to its original source when it loses its consciousness. But everything always builds on consciousness, and that's how like the fuel for evolution is that consciousness.
Not me, but I hate you. I think another example of this is in television shows that are on like their 6th or 7th season, and the writers have run out of things to do, and they need to like keep on upping the stakes.
Time loop!
Randomly start slaughtering characters off. Why? There's not really a good reason, other than, I mean, we gotta do this or you'll stop watching the show. It's gimmicky. It's real gimmicky. Okay, but what are genuine surprises, and how do we pull those off? One, I think a genuine surprise is set up very carefully through foreshadowing that the reader doesn't see until they go back and read it a second time. I also think really good surprises change the way that we read or interpret the first part of the story. It gives this new light that helps us interpret that part actually better. Third, I think a good surprise somehow deepens the storyline. It has symbolic meaning to it, or it's alluding to something that gives a sort of richness to the story that if you didn't have that surprise, wouldn't be there. And I think a fourth point is that a good surprise holds up on rereading. Like, you can reread it with pleasure, even though you know what's going to happen, and still think, oh, you got me. Good one. And I think a great example of a good surprise would be something like in Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
When you have the big reveal and you realize all along they were, spoiler alert, the same character. It is meticulously set up. It changes how you view every single scene in that book, and it really deepens the themes about...
And that's kind of like what it will be with the Viceroy, is when the Viceroy turns over and you're going to look back at the moments when the Viceroy has been, like, absolutely retarded and then an absolute genius. And it's like, oh. But it's like, you know, he wasn't just hiding it. This was actually, like, two completely different personalities. One is Gaia and one is Anima. And that he truly doesn't have his own existence. That this character is basically Gaia in the first book. And then it becomes Anima in the second book. And they try to save the character, but they can't save the character. But everyone winds up dying anyways, which means all consciousness returns. But the problem is the Viceroy's consciousness is basically gone. Gaia was only able to partition enough that she could hold on to. But as soon as she grabbed hold of it, it annihilated his consciousness. So she just had a grip on his mind that Anima couldn't fully take over. So at certain periods of time, she could take this. Feel like you have the whole book written in your head already. Oh, I pretty much do, Beezus. I pretty much do. Like, beginning to end, it's all there. It just needs to be, like... organized? Like, that's what this is for, right? I'm like, I have so much information,